Ladies and gentlemen, this is TVP World. You're watching another edition of Break the Fake, where we debunk fake news and combat false narratives. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and let's get rolling. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has once again demonstrated that he lives in an alternate information universe, one with its own physics, its own logic, and apparently its own definition of truth. This time, he declared that although there are more Western media outlets, people allegedly trust RT and Sputnik more because they tell the truth.
Хотя кто победит, если вы знаете ответ?
Смотря что понимать под доминированием. Если количественный фактор, то чисто арифметически, конечно, мировой эфир и электронное пространство заполнены огромным количеством медиа, которые созданы в США, в Британии, на деньги США и Британии, в Европе, на европейские деньги, за рубежом очень много филиалов. И, конечно, количественно здесь очень трудно сравнивать. Но тот факт, что по посещаемости такие ресурсы, как RT, Спутник, находятся на самых передовых позициях, говорит о том, что есть и другой показатель, другой критерий, а именно, насколько пользователь информации доверяет источнику. И с этих позиций, конечно, RT и Спутник, у них очень такая серьезная репутация. За это их и не любят, потому что они говорят правду.
Now, claiming RT and Sputnik are the world's most trusted truth tellers is like insisting Russian elections are competitive. You can say it, but you really shouldn't expect anyone outside of your own echo chamber to nod. These channels are the pillars of the Kremlin narrative machine, where war is a special operation, sanctions are motivation, and Russia's internal isolation is proof of moral superiority. Lavrov's comment basically admits what everyone already knows. RT and Sputnik don't report news, they manufacture a worldview, a comfortable one tailored for an audience that wants reassurance, not information. In that universe, Russia never invades, it responds. Russia never collapses, it adapts. And Russia never lies, it simply redefines the truth. So when Lavrov praises RT and Sputnik for their honesty, it's less about journalism and more about loyalty. In the Kremlin system, truth isn't something that you verify, it's something you assign. And while the rest of the world treats Russian propaganda like background noise, Moscow clings to it as the only reality worth defending. After all, if the real world looks bad, you can always build a better one on television. After the latest wave of missile strikes on Ukrainian cities, Russia has decided to open a second front, the fake news one. And since Photoshop alone apparently no longer satisfies the creative ambitions of Kremlin propagandists, they've now recruited artificial intelligence. Welcome to Kremlin GPT, where war crimes come with filters and neural network lighting. Now, Ukrainian analysts have recorded a sudden surge in AI-generated images, supposedly showing victims of Ukrainian air defense or civilians shelled by the armed forces, and other tragedies as well. Not a single one of these people actually exists. They're stitched together faces, mismatched limbs, and backgrounds that look like they were rendered on a potato. Now, these fabrications are pumped out by anonymous accounts that quietly build an audience and then flip overnight into pro-Russian amplifiers. A conveyor belt of prefabricated sentiment. The Kremlin's calculation is obvious. Missiles cost millions. AI images cost a few cents in the utility bill. So why bother hiding your responsibility for dead civilians when you can just draw reality in a flood of synthetic emotions? And yet even this innovation falls apart instantly. The fakes break under the slightest inspection. Missing fingers here, extra teeth there, collapsing even faster than a caliber missile that forgot how to stay airborne. Each of these AI tragedies is another reminder of the same core truth. Russia is terrified of documentation, terrified of evidence, terrified of the world seeing what it actually does. So It generates a parallel universe where nothing is its fault and everything is somebody else's atrocity. Not because it's convincing, but because for the Kremlin, faking a world is easier than facing one. So today, the world supposedly took a step towards peace. A very tiny step, the kind that you'd miss unless someone screamed it into a megaphone. And right on cue, the Putin loyal babushka brigades, the same senior activist group who cheer for every Kremlin move, recorded a video praising the version of the draft peace plan that looked like Putin's Christmas wish list. And this time, they recorded a solemn video praising the supposed peace plan and urging Volodymyr Zelensky to not make a mess in a circus. Alright, that's pause here. The video is actually physically painful to watch. I can't be the only one who saw it. We're all in this now, so let's roll the tape.
Мы, отряды Путина, прочитали 28 пунктов соглашения на примирение. И тебе советуем, Зеленский, не устраивать балаган, цирк. Давай соглашайся. Мы такие добренькие не будем больше никогда.
Владимир Зеленский, необходимо подписать мирный договор. Иначе вся ваша коррупционная схема, цепочка будет скрыта. Сначала пойдете вы, Украина, затем пойдет Евросоюз, а затем пойдет и американские коррупционеры.
Зеленский, подписывай!
Alright, so cringe aside, the idea that the Kremlin fan club can lecture anyone about not staging a circus is already absurd. But praising Trump's draft plan, something not finalized and still full of unknowns, reveals the desperation behind the act. It's the diplomacy of collapse. When nothing is working on the battlefield, they suddenly reinvent themselves as peacemakers. And we know what peace means in Kremlin speak. Surrender territory, weaken an army, shut up politically, and pretend to be grateful. Peace plan equals pressure. Don't make a circus equals stop resisting. So Putin's granny peace brigades can applaud the capitulation proposal every day, but the essence remains unchanged. Ukraine wants peace, real peace, not the Kremlin version, which is just defeat wrapped in flowery language and delivered by babushkas with rehearsed sincerity. Their appeals aren't diplomacy, they're another episode of the same old show. Russia is tired of fighting and even more tired of losing. The Russian propaganda machine has rolled out a new economic fantasy. After the United States and its allies moved closer to using frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine, the Kremlin suddenly announced that it could take countermeasures. And pro-government media began circulating claims that Washington might lose $6.6 billion in response. The message is simple. If you touch ours, we'll touch yours. The problem? Well, Russia doesn't really have anything to touch. There are no mechanisms in Russia for any kind of mirror confiscation. Since 2022, Moscow has already blocked Western companies from withdrawing their profits or selling their assets freely. Everything that could be frozen is already frozen. The Kremlin can't seize US government property because it doesn't have access to any. So these statements aren't about economics, they're about creating the illusion that Russia still has leverage. The goal is to pressure Western governments, to inject doubt, and to suggest costs where none realistically exist. When you strip away the theatrics, the picture is clear. Russia is trying to compensate for a lack of real options with loud threats. Mirror measures are not a policy, but a talking point that's meant to sound tough while changing nothing. In practice, Moscow can't counter the freezing of its assets. It can only claim it can and hope someone believes it. And with that, we conclude this edition of Break the Fake. For more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.